Hello, everybody. Welcome to part 8 of the series on the question, what is a library if the building is closed? Question that arose, of course, once they all closed, and a lot of people are stuck today without access to the library facility and all the services that go along with that. We started the first one of these. We did a brainstorm session on March the 21st, and we started this series on the 26th, I believe, yes. And this will be number 8 in effectively just a little over a month. We've had 20, as of today, we will have had 26 speakers and over 1,200 people register for the series. We've had some extraordinary content. It is all recorded. These will be recorded today. And as you see on the screen, the prior sessions are recorded there. They are not yet indexed or broken by individual speaker, but you can scan through the videos pretty quickly to find the speaker you may be interested in. We're working on breaking those into individual components, indexing them, and so forth. So bear with us on that, but there's still a lot of good content. Thank you all for showing up today. First off, I want to thank our hosts, the Internet Society and the International Federation of Library Associations. We have the estimable Stephen Weiber on the controls in the Netherlands. Stephen is with IFLA, longtime associate in various efforts to connect more people, connect and enable more people. And then we also have a media co-host, Broadband Breakfast, who's been helpful with getting the word out. And they have a regular newsletter with lots of good stuff in it. Let's see, need to advance here. There's our basic question. We've broken this down, or we've just sort of approached it from these sort of obvious aspects that relate to the question of internet access, digital services, physical materials, and social infrastructure. Social infrastructure being the addition, since we had a presentation from Copenhagen librarian and made this point about the, the obvious point, I guess you would say, about the role that the library plays in the social makeup of a community. Most of the interest in our sessions have seemed to come around internet access. And today, most of what we'll talk about today relates to that. But not only. Digital services are skyrocketing. Demand for library e-materials has jumped, 50% at least in the last couple of months. But this key statement we make here, that assuring access to public information is an essential service. Excuse me. I know a lot of you are wrestling with closures and designations as you're being forced to close, as the library is not considered an essential service. Well, we disagree with that. That today, especially today, people really need interactive communications and not just a telephone, and they can't just rely on their TV and their radio to get the kind of information they need to deal with the situation today, especially while they're locked in. So we recommend everybody reassert that as a critical, essential service. Public information is a term we're using for, well, of course, the open internet, but also specifically government information, health, education, jobs, the rest of it. All the government services have to be available to everyone. And if they're digital, you better be online. It is what libraries do, and they do best. Gigabit Libraries, our group, it's an open collaboration of libraries innovating with technology around different kinds of elements, and act as a kind of a distributed showcase or test bed for emerging technologies for these various general objectives that libraries have. Today, we have a great lineup, a full lineup, and we'll get to it here pretty quickly. I just wanted to add that this last week, we've seen a 20% increase in the total number of cases of COVID-19, and roughly 3 million worldwide now, with over 1 million of those, a third, in the US alone, which is kind of stunning. I mean, all these numbers, everybody agrees, are undercounts, but still, to even have a third with only 5% of the world's population is a matter of great concern, and that's in addition to the fact that we don't have as much testing in the U.S. as a lot of other countries with developed health systems. So we'll see where this all goes. It doesn't look like it's going to end soon. One of the most interesting challenges people are facing right now, I think we as a whole, are how we're going to open school in the fall. It's just a horrendous problem. The logistics are a nightmare in the normal circumstances, but right now they're just extremely daunting. And we'll touch on this because it's one of our key points about how libraries are able to work with schools and support schools and students in this really extreme circumstance. And once again, libraries stepping up to the job. I have posted our speaker bios in the chat. It's at the top of the chat. Excuse me. And as well as some other helpful links that we think you might enjoy. As I said, access seems to be our most popular topic in terms of numbers of people that registered for access-related Zoom sessions. I do want to ask one question of everybody. We don't have a survey form attached to this. We're just using the chat, but it'd be interesting to know how many sessions the people that are on today have participated in. Is your first one, your second, your third? Has anybody been? We'd really like to know. Just type in a number and let it run, and we'll scan these later and see what we get here. So it's looking pretty good. Thanks for these coming in, kind of averaging 3 or 4. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, terrific. Well, let's get to the agenda here. And our first speaker, Sharon Strober. Sharon and I have worked on projects and have known each other for a number of years. Sharon is going to take us out today with her work on checkout hotspots, with hotspots and Wi-Fi being our main topic. I am trying to stop sharing here. I can't seem to get my cursor to. There we go. Thank you, host. So Sharon, you are on. Very good. And okay. I will give you, I'll give you the high sign or just interrupt you here in about 9 minutes. See what you can tell us about checkout hotspots and how they're used, how popular. I know they're popular. People are ordering millions of them. Go ahead, please, Sharon.
And I'm assuming you can see the slide now?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Don, for inviting me to chat for a while. And I'm sorry I'm going to have to leave the meeting at around 10:30 or so for a state library meeting here in Texas. I'm happy to share what we've learned about Wi-Fi hotspots. And I thought that the best information I could share would be on the practical side of things. The group here at the University of Texas has done a lot of research on a variety of hotspot programs. I'm assuming that everybody knows what a hotspot is and how it works. It works on cell phone signals. And basically, we've looked at how hotspots have been used in both urban and in rural areas. We've looked at a rural Kansas program that was statewide at 18 libraries. We looked at a program in Maine in one upper county. We looked at and actually ran a program here in Texas with 6 collaborating libraries. The Talker Foundation funded that particular program. And then our very first look at hotspots was in an unusual program that the New York Public Library offered back in 16 and 17. And they had a very unusual configuration. They loaned out 10,000 devices, and they loaned them out for 1 year. That's the only library I've heard of that has basically given people access for a solid year in order to facilitate broadband. And we have some interesting data on some of the results of that particular one. Urban programs are really different from rural. They were obviously, because they were so much bigger, they were better staffed and so forth. And the constituencies and needs and competitive arena was quite different as well. Obviously, in an urban area like New York, there are opportunities to get access. There are several providers there. The problem, and I'll come back to this repeatedly, is affordability. Affordability issues exist in rural areas as well, but simple availability of a good solid signal is also an issue. These are the hotspots. You can see them in the upper right there. I'm sure most of you have seen these particular devices. So I'm gonna, in this very limited time that I have available, I would talk a little bit about some of what we learned about how people use hotspots. There are all the predictable uses of hotspot connectivity, and people using hotspots are really doing the same things that people with paid fixed line connectivity do as well. There are the predictable video streaming applications, getting news using social media, and so forth. We saw a lot of heightened interest in using hotspot connectivity very specifically for completing forms that might be time consuming and that might mean some kind of connectivity that goes beyond what you would normally do on your cell phone. And don't forget, a lot of people are accessing the internet only using their cell phone. We found, especially in the rural areas and among immigrant communities, that Skype was a very popular application used in conjunction with hotspot connectivity. Okay. And we also found that more time online also led people to feel that they were more skilled with the internet more generally and more comfortable. The homeschooling community, especially in our rural sample, was kind of a surprise to us. And it turned out that homeschool communities were among the most avid users of hotspots, as these various libraries in Maine and Kansas made hotspot connectivity available. A lot of homeschool communities do online education, and they connect with each other that way as well. So in a way, what homeschool communities have already learned might have some might be able to give guidance to a lot of the school districts now coping with the sudden onset of massive distance education opportunities. Above all, I think our results in both urban and rural environments underscored the financial precarity of a lot of the constituencies that use libraries to check out hotspots. Don, are you trying to say something?
Excuse me, I should mute. I was coughing.
Okay. Yeah, and there was a lot of financial precarity among the people using the library for internet access and availing themselves of these hotspot programs. Most of the users, and indeed most of the population in this country, have mobile phones. Not all of them are smartphones, but a lot of people are using prepaid plans or have data plans, and they're rotating on and off services, especially depending on their financial services. And if there's one thing we can anticipate now, it's that as many people have lost their jobs, financial precarity is even more even more of an issue excuse me, now than before. Snapshot of our results among the rural hotspot programs. was that they were way more popular in Kansas than Maine, and we think that had to do with how they were managed. So those of you thinking about looking into hotspot programs, loaning programs, this might be really useful information for you. Kansas really kept tabs on the libraries and was there to offer tech support to the libraries. They had monthly calls with librarians to check in, to share information, to just make sure everything was unfolding as they wanted things to unfold. And it kind of created a good community of practice among the librarians. A lot of the librarians were sufficiently impressed that they found local funding to continue their hotspot programs. This, both in Maine and in Kansas, the state libraries funded them on a trial basis. In Maine, not as popular. The Maine program was different, and another critical difference, in addition to not having any kind of tight management role, Maine had a bandwidth delimited program with their hotspots. Kansas did not. And they had, initially at least, they were really trying to prioritize families with K through 12 kids. That was not the case in Kansas. So they also didn't really roll out any uniform publicity. There was confusion when devices didn't work in Maine. They didn't have a kind of go-to person to help them with problems. And that's not to say that there were a lot of problems, but if the batteries run down and somebody doesn't know how to recharge the battery, the hotspot is dead for all intents and purposes. There are really easy fixes, but a little bit of hand-holding in the form of tech support was something that we thought really characterized success versus less success. So the Verizon representative who was serving Kansas was really accommodating, really helpful, available for webinars, for troubleshooting, and Maine just really did not have a helpful sounding board when there were problems. And that's one reason why we think that there was way less utility associated with the hotspot programs in Maine compared to Kansas. So there were a lot of coverage challenges. This really messy map on the right-hand side of the screen illustrates connectivity in Texas. And the green represents a strong signal, the red represents a weak signal. Weak versus strong can make a huge difference with these hotspots. So when people are ordering hotspots, it's really worthwhile to test for the existence of a good connection ahead of time. And we certainly saw that very squarely when we ran our Texas program. Texas is more rural and has a lot of areas where there isn't even good cell phone connectivity.
Sharon?
Yes.
1 minute, please.
1 minute. So I'm going to wrap up then with some of these other challenges that are really practical things. We strongly recommend when we consult with libraries or other entities rolling out hotspot programs that they get unlimited data plans. If you don't have an unlimited plan, all your bandwidth is going to be used up in the first week that the hotspot is loaned out. The main program was a program that had a limited bandwidth, and they had a lot of issues around throttling. Throttling refers to your bandwidth slowing down. There were issues of loss, theft, and damage, and having user agreements and checkout policies were vital. By the way, we have templates for all this stuff at our website that we've made freely available to libraries. And some libraries have had to grapple with figuring out when to call the police to recover their hotspots. A lot of libraries used wait lists that reached several months in some cases, and some libraries, smaller libraries, implemented a shareable calendar to allow for specific checkout dates.
Sharon,
Excuse me.
Can you post the study link in the chat when you get a minute?
I sure will. The one thing I wanted to wanted to wrap up with was with this slide, some strategies for success. And this would be usable for both schools and libraries. Having a good relationship with the ISP to get some help on debugging operational issues. Coverage, which I already manage, is really very important. Different locations have different needs. And in our rural areas in particular, we were really surprised and kind of gratified, frankly, to see that library checkouts flourished for social community-based needs. Wi-Fi hotspots were taken to community events.
Sharon,
So I think I'll wrap
to
up.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up right now with just asking you to be creative with your hotspots and don't be shy about reaching out if you want some help from us.
Great, terrific. This is fascinating. This is a whole, I mean, this is kind of the obvious thing people are doing right now. It looks quick to do and simple, but it's not simple. And it's complex in how it's implemented and the cultural background and so forth. You've really given us a lot of insight today, Sharon. Thank you very much. I'd like to set up our next speaker here, who is Sara Jones, the county librarian from Marin County, who's going to present us with a really interesting project plan to create a Wi-Fi mesh network in an area of her county, lower income, yet a dense area of a couple of thousand students, most of whom lack good broadband. Sara, are you ready to go?
I am. Can you share my screen, or do I do that?
It's up at the top of the screen. You slide your cursor up, you'll see a share screen button.
Okay. Let's see where, oh.
Or maybe it's at the bottom.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start. I think I can keep working on it. There's some kind of thing asking me about security and privacy and such. So,
well, you know, I've got that one image, so you go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll try
that'd
to
be
find
fine.
it. I'll share that. All right.
Okay. Right. And I can talk from it, and I don't think there was anything incredible on the slides. So thank you, everyone. And I am going to talk about a couple of things, but certainly the mesh network. The first thing I wanted to talk about, though, was a similar program of sharing Wi-Fi hotspots. So like everyone in the country, we had, school closed on March 16th, and everyone scrambled to figure out what that was going to look like. So we scrambled with everyone, and across the Marin County, we needed 780 Wi-Fi hotspots as of that day to cover the students across the whole county. I think we're an interesting analysis that kind of aligns with Sharon's, because Marin County is both rural and suburban. So if you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, you're about 3/4 over, then you're in Marin County. And so we have rural coastline that has really, really poor connectivity. So we went off and running, and I think everybody who gets into Wi-Fi hotspots right now, completely understands that they're hard to get right now. So we were able to get a number of them. The first thing was assessing that need. So that was at 780. And just as Sharon mentioned, and some of this was by luck, some of it was also because we'd run a Wi-Fi hotspot circulation to student program before, so we had some experience. But we are purchasing multiple providers. We have 300 of them are T-Mobile, and then we found a company called Kajit that does them in the education environment. And so we have 600 of the, actually 500 roughly of the Kajits, and we did a couple of different providers for them. We did both AT&T and Verizon, because people can live just a half a mile and one provider will work and the other one will not. So that was, I think, a really interesting part to find them. They do have, they are not unlimited data, but you can put all your data in one package. So you can share data and you can raise it as needed. And one of the things that we're doing is the schools, if they need more data, they're going to have to help us purchase that. But so far, so good, you know, pretty well. We have about 150 that have been live for at least a month. And teachers need a lot more data, so we have been able to provide teachers some of our unlimited Wi-Fi hotspots. But the exciting part about the Kajik program is that the dashboard gives you real data, not just data usage, but how the data is being used. So you can see when they're actually doing online learning. If the school platform is Zoom, you can see how long they're on Zoom. If they go to PBS or any of the other kind of platforms that are learning. These Wi-Fi hotspots are content filtered. They're SEPA compliant, and that's also something that people are really finding out. Schools in general are believing that they need to be SEPA compliant with their Wi-Fi hotspots. I think that's probably true. You know, as someone who's managed SEPA compliance when I was a state librarian, you know, I think that there is a technical legal question about once it leaves the school building, do you still have that requirement for SEPA compliance, the Children's Internet Protection Act? But in general, schools want to do that for, you know, the right reasons. There are a lot of things on the internet that are that can in fact be harmful to children. But the good side of content filtering, because I've never been a huge fan of it, is that it does show you what's accessed and what's denied. And of course, what we don't want to have happen is these going to be student access and then end up being, you know, not for the student use. So we can see hours of online learning with that dashboard, and we think that that's really exciting possibilities. The other thing that I think is great about this program is every one of these hotspots has a library card. The schools originally just wanted to loan them until school was out. We said, no, that really isn't going to serve the purpose. So every one of these 780 students will be enrolled in summer learning, and we will be pushing data to them. So I think that's a really exciting, exciting possibility for seeing actual educational outcomes from this program versus just knowing that we're closing the digital divide and providing data. We're going to be able to see what that impact of that is. So I think then the other thing that Don was mentioning, because we know this is a 3-tiered solution, hotspots are one thing, connectivity in towns and cities is another, and then real broadband, which I know the final speaker today, oh, there you go. The final speaker today is going to talk about hopefully federal money that's going, because you know, once the last broadband money went, lots of middle mile didn't get done, lots of last mile didn't get done, a whole lot of that in Marin County. There's places that the connectivity, as I mentioned, is just terrible. So this Canal Wi-Fi hotspot, so the map that you're seeing from Dawn, the city of San Rafael is on the bay, and you can see the, you know, city of San Francisco from the city of San Rafael. And this is a part of the community that is has high levels of poverty. It's primarily people of color living in it. And if you go on one side of that canal, you'll find great connectivity and people able to buy all kinds of services. And you go on the other side of the canal and you'll find almost none. And that was intentional. The you know, the providers knew they couldn't get the resources from those folks, so they chose not to wire it. So this is a novel thing of trying to do a mesh network. They're going to use the county's network, which is something called Midas. There's a very large health campus very near this community to provide health and human services. So that's the drop off, or that's the start off for high band, you know, broadband connectivity. And then their intention is to connect this via street lights and tall buildings and all kinds of things to create what you're seeing in this map is the area they'll be able to create. This is the deepest concentration of families and students with no access and with those economic disadvantages. So this is playing right now, as with the other one. Between the two projects, we needed about $500,000 to $600,000 to make it work. We're working on the Wi-Fi hotspots. We almost entirely closed that gap. We're still looking for about $100,000. This program is in its infancy. One of the things that's really difficult about this is, I know this is true for everyone on the call, is that when you need the money the most, the money is the least available. So we were really scrambling to find it, and we're really waiting for that federal money or state money to come through, but rules aren't here yet. But this is a really novel one. We're doing it as a proof of concept. It could help us in a number of other neighborhoods in Marin, or towns in Marin, or places where they just, again, mostly because the providers don't see the economic value of putting the broadband in, so they don't. So I think, I don't know how I'm doing on time, Don, but I thought that covers,
you are spot on.
That covers my presentation.
This is wonderful. This is not only a proof of concept, this is an actual project to deliver services to a group that very much needs it. And the fact that the library is collaborating with the school district to accommodate these students is just fantastic. The project itself is an example of what we're trying to do here, is highlight really interesting, valuable projects in this environment, and encourage anyone that has ideas about funding or questions about such projects to kind of vet these and develop them. So,
oh, good. How you doing?
Anybody put your questions for Sara in the chat. We think this is indeed a concept that needs replication. It fits within our topic today, of course, related to Wi-Fi access and how it's being provided in these different ways. We couldn't have two greater contrasts between the checkout approach in these fixed neighborhood access points. There are a lot of ways to do this, but this is one that you've got a team together already and you're building support for, Sara. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the share here. So Stephen is monitoring our questions, and if any come up, we'll circle back to those. But let's move on so we can get through our schedule here. And next up, we have Scott. Scott, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Scott Allen, Deputy Director of the Public Libraries Association. He's going to tell us about this exciting new partnership that PLA has with Microsoft to boost Wi-Fi at the buildings. And we'll talk about the distinctions of at, around, and beyond the buildings, as we have been for the beginning. But Scott, welcome, and tell us about this program, kind of how it got going and what it's really designed to do. It's fairly limited, and so please.
Sure, and I'm gonna thank you, Don, and I'm honored to follow Sharon and Sara after hearing about the great work they've been doing at the regional, state, and local level. That's really kind of what we want to see happen. So just want to make sure, can you all see my screen, the slide?
Yes.
Great. So as Don mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about a project we just kind of launched this week, but I'm going to wrap it in some context of what else we've been doing at the Public Library Association. My job there, I'm a deputy, and I know most of you know PLA is part of the American Library Association, and I work mainly on digital skilling and technology training programs, and also a host of other areas like family engagement and equity and diversity and health issues, but really focusing on the digital literacy skills. What we've been doing with Microsoft to help mostly rural libraries expand their capacity to do that work. Just quickly, we did a survey, PLA did, if you haven't heard yet, in March 2020 about the public libraries' reactions to COVID-19. We know 98% are closed. Everybody's pretty familiar with that. And some of the other interesting things that came out that are related to this discussion were that 81% were already leaving on their Wi-Fi when closed, 12% were adding it, 36% already had Wi-Fi access points outside, they extended their signal outside the library, 8% were planning to add it, and then 21% were already checking out hotspots, and 2% were considering adding that service, despite, I think, what we all know are the challenges right now of getting hotspots to physically, because they're on short supply, and also then if you're closed, how do you actually get them in people's hands? And this survey, by the way, had about 2,500 libraries replied, and there are full results on our website, which hopefully you're seeing now, that go through all the different findings in the survey. That we knew kind of the libraries would be challenged by continuing to provide access to their technology training and their Wi-Fi signals. So when we started talking to Microsoft about a month ago, in the context of things we'd been doing with them, we figured, what can we do now to help with this current situation? So what I'm going to talk about just quickly in the few minutes I have is the work we've done with providing grants and technology support to libraries with Microsoft and other partners, and then also some of the things we're doing with technology training, if I have time. So we've called our effort that we started last summer, Digital Lead, Rural Libraries Creating New Possibilities. And we've really done two things through this program. Last fall, we awarded about 43, I think it was, rural libraries with either a supply of hotspots to start a loaning program, or computers, laptops, desktops, and all-in-ones to help them do new programming. We got about a 50-50 split, so we had about 20, just over 20 libraries request the hotspots, just over 20 request the computer equipment, and gave away about 160 hotspots, about 160 computers through this project. It was a really, and we were targeted specifically in some states and counties that the Microsoft Airband initiative is working in to expand access to Airband and to Wi-Fi, and we limited it to rural libraries as dictated by the IMLS locale codes of 41, 42, and 43. So it was a really great project for PLA. You know, our goal is to help under-resourced libraries do more technology training and serve the community better. And these were critical pieces of equipment that they needed. Some of the applications we got had really kind of inspiring, but also a little sad stories about how, you know, we have two computers are 10 years old. We'd really love these computers to replace our equipment, or our library's open 3 days a week, and we're only, and every time we're about to open, there's a line out the door of people needing to use the computers. So, and just this week, I got an email from one of the libraries we provided laptops to, saying as soon as they got them, they were out in the community helping people complete the census, and they were at a local food bank helping people, you know, sign up for benefits every time they came in to get food. Really valuable work there. So that was the fall. What we just launched this week actually is kind of pivoting to help some of the same rural libraries, but even more, do what they can now. And we are giving away Wi-Fi access points to libraries in rural communities. Again, this time there's 28 states and about 800 counties that are eligible. So there is actually a list. If you go to our Public Wi-Fi Access Micro Grant Program page and you click through to the list of states and counties, it will tell you exactly where we're able to do this. And we're taking applications now. There's an online application form. The very simple, but it's asking libraries to tell us, you know, where will you put the Wi-Fi access point and how will you promote its use? And the goal here really is, we know we couldn't get hotspots to start loaning programs, was really just to help some libraries extend their signals out into the property, into the parking lot, so the community could keep using them. Because as we saw, most libraries are doing that already. How can we help them do it a little bit better? And then some of the library systems that have applied are doing some really kind of unique things with partner agencies, taking the access points and getting them out farther from where we initially thought they might, which, you know, was on the library property. So we hope we committed to doing at least 50. I think we're going to do well more than that. We already have over 100 applications, and most libraries are able to do the installation themselves. So that frees up some of our resources to provide more hardware to these libraries. So if you're a rural library in one of those states, please consider applying. So that's kind of where we are with our Microsoft partnership.
What's the timetable on that, Scott?
So we just launched it this week. Every Monday, we will be cycling through applications and making awards until we have exhausted these resources. So I think about a month probably will take to get through what we have. So if you can apply, try and apply before next Monday or the next Monday for sure. That's the safest advice I can give.
We had a presentation from Scenic, the California R&E network, several sessions ago about methods for boosting these signals, things that libraries can do. It's on a prior recorded session, but I hope what you're doing will also inspire people, even if they're not getting a grant. I'm sure it will, but it may also give them tips that can help them do it.
Yeah, and we did hear from some libraries that just saw this application that they just done this themselves, right? So we kind of figured it was a good way to help. So that's really, I think, what I was invited on to talk about. Just quickly, because I know we're hitting the 40 minutes after the hour. We also do a lot for libraries to help them with digital literacy training. And so right now, when libraries are closed, especially, we're promoting digitallearn.org, which is our online training tool. It's accessible everywhere, whether your library is open or closed. Very simple classes that are self-directed for basic computer learners, people who either have very little or no experience with computers, covering a range of topics from your basic stuff to job help, being safe online. And then we also have a whole section of this website, digitallearn.org, that has course material that you can personalize for your library programs or anywhere really. They're design documents, template presentations. You can download them all and personalize them if you're able to do a class. And then lots of other things we're doing to encourage libraries to teach technology, whether they're webinars we do and record that people can watch, or our new product we just put out, which is a tech skills checklist that library staff should take. So, everybody who works in a library has the potential to get asked for help with a device or with a computer, right? So how do you make sure all your staff have just these basic skills so that they're able to help patrons when they come in, but also so they can be more productive as an employee? So tech skills checklist we just put up on our websites. And that is what I was planning to talk about, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's great, Scott. That's a lot, actually. Thank you for getting it in such a tight presentation. One of the main issues that seems to come up is that communities and citizens and people are generally unaware of the range of services that libraries provide, and that libraries are notorious for lacking, marketing skills, if I can use a term, to let people know what's available. What are you seeing that people are doing now to get the word out, especially now that the buildings are closed? Scott, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question? I was
Sure.
trying to catch up on the chat. Sorry about that.
Okay. It's a question of letting the community know what services are available. It's a classic thing that people don't know what they can get from the library. Yeah. And so right now, the combination has changed. The building is closed. How's the word getting out? What are libraries doing to let people know what is available at the library?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, I just saw some information from North Central Regional Library in Washington State, which if anyone's here from there, good job. They talking about, I'm sorry?
I think we have the state librarian on.
Oh, great. But they talked about how they kind of redid some of their front-facing website content to talk about what they're doing now and what they're able to do. I know a lot of libraries are using social media. Some of them are expanding into other platforms. If they hadn't been using YouTube or Instagram, they're starting to do that. And then they're just doing, we've seen pictures on some of the webinars we've done where literally putting physical signs out on the property saying Wi-Fi here, internet here, anything they can do. And working with partners in the community is really critical as well. I know a lot of them are helping to communicate out through schools and government agencies. That's really what we've heard about.
Great, yeah, and we also heard that a lot of libraries are using traditional media, radio, broadcast, newspaper to get the word out. It's a challenge to let people know about digital services if they don't have access. So even more so that to ramping up the hotspots at the library. The Wi-Fi access is critical more than ever for so many people that rely on the library for access. I think it's like that Pew survey a few years ago said it was almost 1 in 3 adults accesses the internet at a public library. It's just an astonishing number, but they have to go there to access that. We'll get to the kiosk concept maybe later, but right now I think we need to thank Scott and turn to Joey Wender, Senior Policy Advisor for Senator Ed Markey. Some would call Senator Markey the father of the E-rate program, which now as a senator, he continues to support and has just announced a bill proposing to boost the E-rate fund by $4 billion to accommodate the surge in demand and to finally fulfill the mission of E-rate to connect all the libraries and the schools, and now even to connect the students, as wherever the students are, that's where school is, but then they have to be connected. So Joey, you're on and up, and welcome, and please tell us about this bill and the prospects for passage.
Excellent. First of all, Don, thank you for inviting me here today, and thanks for everyone for being on the call, and really for all that you do. The senator would agree that he is the father of the program. He's the last remaining of the three founding fathers, or founding fathers and mothers, we'll say. It was Ed Markey, J. Rockefeller, and Olympia Snow are the three parents, we'll say, of the E-rate program in 1996, which has now provided over $50 billion to schools and libraries to ensure that they're connected to the internet. And so thank you for everything you guys have done to date, trying to keep people connected. From the senator's perspective, and all of you I know agree, it's obvious that connectivity is more important than ever, given that we're all social distancing during this during the coronavirus pandemic. And while the E-rate program has been so effective in connecting schools and libraries, as you all know, as we've been talking about, kids can't go to schools, and people can't go to libraries because, for the most part, the physical buildings are closed. And so we have proposed $4 billion, a one-time cash infusion from the general fund into the E-rate program to allow schools and libraries to spend money on two specific items. One is connectivity. So providing, in your case, patrons of libraries, mobile hotspots, and other ways to connect to the internet that are not physically inside of your building. And two, to be providing devices to people so that they can connect. It's connectivity and it's devices. And the idea is we're going to continue to feed it through the existing rules and the existing regs of the E-rate program that have been so successful over the years. And that way we can achieve this with the speed that we need to, because we know that we've gone 2 months already, and unfortunately this could go on off and on for a very long time. And we know that libraries, that was my son popping in and my wife. Hold on, Sam. This is learning at home here. We know that schools and libraries need this money immediately if they're going to be able to satisfy the needs of their patrons. And so we're going to introduce next week. We've got a number of Senate co-sponsors. There's House legislation as well by Congresswoman McMahon of New York that has introduced her bill. And we think that we've got a pretty good chance of including some or all of this money in the next stimulus bill. We'll call it Stimulus 4, that Congress will hopefully be passing in May, or if not, in June. And so we'd love all of your support, and the extent that you're talking to your lawmakers, both your senators and your members of Congress, let them know we need are able to connect, even though we can't open our front doors. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions you all have.
That's great, Joy, and compliments again to the senator for his leadership on this, and it is absolutely due, if not overdue, to complete the promise now roughly 25 years ago for E-rate, and we're still not there, of course. One question that's come up is the is the disparity between the E-rate funds going to schools and the part that goes to libraries. Of course, there are, roughly 8 times more school facilities than there are library facilities, but it, according to a number which just came in from the ALA Office of Technology Policy, that libraries receive something between 5 and 7% of E-rate funds when they have roughly 15, 17% of the total facilities base that the E-rate program is going to. That the explanations for that, of course, are kind of varied. Most small town libraries are really small units, a little department of a small government. The school districts are typically larger, have more technical capability, more administrative capacity to do the filings. And yet in total numbers, the libraries serve more people than the schools do, by a good number, not quite as intensively perhaps, but still, we hope that this bill will address this disparity, bring kind of libraries into parity with schools at the level of connectivity. So that's a little pitch that we want to make there, not necessarily expecting you to answer that, but just take it in. Anybody have questions for Joey?
So there's going to be one from Damilare, at least, and then there's a general question. I don't know if Joey has the answer on whether there's going to be another application window for E-rate, given that the 2021 window has just closed.
Those are good questions. Obviously, it'll be in the discretion of the FCC about how they actually want to administer this. What our bill says is that within 7 days of passage, the FCC has to figure out how this is going to work. My guess is there'll be a special application window specifically for these funds. But again, while maybe I wish I was the chairman of the FCC, I'm not, and so I don't get to make that decision. But I think that would be our assumption. And again, and Don, I appreciate everything you're saying. I know this has been a long standing fight, and one that I'm sure will continue into the future. At least at this very moment, my biggest focus is trying to flush as much money into the program as we possibly can to ensure that we can spread this thing out and everybody gets a piece of it. And that's why, we originally called for $2 billion. And this was about 4 weeks ago when, well, as we all know, information about the pandemic changes every day, and we learn more and more. And we originally went with a smaller number. And the reason why we bumped up to $4 billion, and we'll be introducing a $4 billion bill next week, is that it's become more clear that the pandemic will persist for a much longer period of time than first imagined, as we've listened to medical experts and other scientists about the realities of this virus and the lack of a vaccine. So above all, we just want to get the highest number possible. And the highest number possible means that that's the more amount of money for everybody. The bigger the pie, the bigger the pieces.
That's a truism, Joey. Cindy Auden, the State Library from Washington, is wondering about kind of well, let me rephrase it in terms of guidance that the bill can offer to the FCC, right? To kind of set priorities and so forth. So there's room in there to, even if you're not the chairman, to guide the implementation. It's great that there's a pre-existing structure that can handle those funds. That's really valuable. Usually these kind of sudden kind of builds to support have to have a program has to be created and staffed and rules and regulations like we saw in the BTOP program 10 years ago. So this has an established method. Even the funds that are going through IMLS to the state libraries, an established process to track and make the most use of it. But one of the issues around the use of E-rate funds, and especially now, so when the buildings are closed, is that the limitations on where the connectivity can go, defined by the property. If a school gives a computer to a student at home, is that computer the school itself? Is it property of the school and it should be allowed to be connected? Similar kind of questions around library hotspots to extend into neighborhoods like the project we saw that Sara just presented. How do you feel about these kinds of limitations on the program? None of this is talking about reselling anything, but just simply trying to reach the people that are intended to be served by the purpose of the program.
Sure. Well, the bill is very explicit and tries to address everything you're saying. The bill says that for purposes of spending this $4 billion, for purposes of ensuring both connectivity and providing devices, but particularly on the connectivity side, is that we're talking about locations other than the library. And so we don't say, and this was by design, we don't say it must be where a person resides or it must be an X or Y place. We want to create some flexibility because we all know that there's not a solution, one size fits all solution. Different approaches are going to work in different places, whether it's urban, whether it's rural, or depending upon what particular community needs you have. And so, I've heard about all these types of brainstorms and approaches that people have. And, our hope is that, well, our expectation, our desire is that we connect the maximum amount of people possible. And that's why we're trying to create the flexibility in the legislation and having that directive to the FCC so that we don't get into this debate about what is a physical school or what is a physical library or is this a physical home or not a physical home. Like, I don't want to have that debate. The point is to connect people at places that are not the library. Physically.
Great. Well done there. If you have I put up a link to a story on the release, but not the actual announcement itself. If you have a link that you can post on the chat for people to see and find, there's an extraordinary list of organizations that are supporting this legislation. It's impressive, but again, not that surprising given how popular the senator is and how popular the program is.
Thank you.
Any other questions here before we?
Don, we do have one. We do have one question from Damilare for Joey.
What is it? Or who? Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm from Nigeria. My name is Damilare. I work for Library Aid Africa. I would love to say that this has been a very good conversation so far, but the challenge here is that the narrative is different here in African countries, reason being that some public libraries in Africa does not even have access to any library platform because of having access to Wi-Fi services, okay? And that goes my question to Mr. Scott. I have just a question. It's concerning the PLA Microsoft Public Library Wi-Fi micro grants program. I want to ask if this is only for the United States or applicants are welcome from other regions of the world, number one. And the second question is around the data training tools. Also, the same question goes for, is it usable? Can we use it for other people from various parts of the world? And my last question for Mr. Scott is there an opportunity for a reciprocal program of such nature to bring the same process to some African countries, or how we can domesticate this to work well here, exploring rural communities and some marginalized societies? These are three questions for Mr. Scott. Yeah. And for the last speaker from the e-reading program, you mentioned you provide devices for schools, right? I would like to learn more on how you've been able to do that because there are quite a lot of schools in Nigeria, especially public schools and other African countries who don't even have a library. And I could recall last year working on a project with World Reader, and we had a challenge of access to resources online because students don't have gadgets to study online. All right, so there's a possibility of how we can get resources, of how we can get gadgets for some of these public schools here in Nigeria to use to access content online to study. All right, and the general question for the speakers, which has been my major headache for the past few weeks, is how have we been able to reach people living with disabilities in this lockdown era, okay, especially those that are visually impaired, basically. So those are my few questions that I have. Thank you very much.
That's great. That's a hatful of questions that will take more than a minute to answer, but let's use the chat to reply to any of those that anyone has response to. But Scott, anything you have to say, or maybe Stephen would have perspective.
Yeah.
One of the things I should say that this Zoom session has been international, and that we're looking at libraries everywhere to collaborate in a global response to a global situation. So Scott, I give you the last word here.
Sure. I just quickly want right now our Microsoft partnership is only looking at U.S. states, and even then it's only about 28 of them. We've been expanding over years, but I will make a note to find out. I know Microsoft testing is going on everywhere, so there may be something in Africa that they're doing. I can follow up on.
I do happen to know that they are active, that the Airband initiative is designed to provide new wireless systems to provide access everywhere in the world. And you'll see a lot of information there. We'll try to find that link and post it for the Airband initiative. This would be get the best answer to your question. We're at the hour here. And so I'll close with a thank you to our speakers. We have a lot of content today. Thanks, Joy, for jumping in at the last minute. Scott, you too didn't have that much time, but I very much appreciate it. Sara, good luck with this project. We'll be looking to help you find funding for that extraordinary canal project. And Sharon, I think we've lost, but good work on quantifying usage on these checkout hotspots. So with that, I will call this a close, though we will stay on and we're available. You know, if anybody wants to talk about anything, we're going to hang around for a while as we usually do after our official time. So thank you and see you next Friday.